If someone had told me I'd be spending 2 awkward weeks working side by side with the guy who broke my teenage heart by doing absolutely nothing, just being hot, charming, and hetero, I would have RSVP'd no to the reunion and blocked the school email. Instead, I hit reply and said, "Sure, happy to help," like an idiot. The reunion committee must have been pulling names out of a hat, because there was no logical reason to pair me with Cameron Ellis, the same Cameron who made 17-year-old me forget how to breathe whenever he walked into calculus class with his backpack slung over one shoulder and his shirt sleeves rolled up just enough to show off tan forearms. We hadn't spoken since graduation. Not once. Not on Facebook, not on Instagram, not even a like. He'd basically vanished into the straight guy mist. Occasionally, I'd hear through a mutual friend that he was working in finance or real estate or some other job that required a firm handshake and zero personal depth. But beyond that, I assumed we existed in different universes. Until now. Hey man. His text said, after the committee looped us into a group email, "Looks like we're stuck with each other. You free to hop on a call this week?" Stuck. Great choice of words. We set a time for Thursday evening. I don't know why I got nervous. It's not like I was still harboring a high school crush on someone who once wore a backwards hat during his senior photo shoot and made it weirdly attractive. I was 28 now. An adult. A professional. A fully out, reasonably well-adjusted gay man who was totally not spiraling. When his name popped up on Zoom, I did a quick mirror check. Hair fine, lighting decent, expression neutral, and clicked join. He looked exactly the same. Well, not exactly. He was older, sharper around the jaw, but still had that clean-cut, all-American thing going on. His voice hadn't changed either. Smooth, easy, always a little too relaxed, like he was used to being listened to. "Dude," he said, breaking into a grin. "Long time." "Yeah," I replied, my tone casual despite the heat rising behind my ears. 10 years. He leaned back in his chair like we were just two old friends catching up. "You look exactly the same," I laughed. "That's generous. I peaked at 17. Everything since then's been damage control," he smirked. "You were always funny." And just like that, something flickered between us, some old current, long buried but still humming underneath. We got through most of the slideshow logistics that first night. Picked a theme, split up the work. He'd organized the old photos people were submitting. I designed the layout and handled the narration. Easy enough. Except it wasn't. Because every time I looked at his face on the screen, I felt like I was back in the high school library, watching him pretend to focus on his math homework while flirting with whichever girl was unlucky enough to be nearby. He still did that thing, smiling a half second after a joke, like he was deciding whether or not to let you know he thought you were funny. It used to drive me insane. It still kinda did. And the thing was, he remembered stuff, like little things. Weren't you the one who did that fake awards video at graduation? The one where you edited in explosions and gave Mrs. Harmon a flamethrower? I blinked. "How do you remember that?" He shrugged. "I dunno. It was hilarious. You had a thing for editing, right?" "I do video now," I said, surprised by how fast the answer came. "Freelance. Mostly documentaries, some marketing." He nodded. "Cool. I always thought you'd do something creative." That got to me, because that meant he'd been paying attention. And if he'd been paying attention, what else did he notice back then? We talked for an hour after we were technically done. No slideshow stuff. Just catching up. He told me he lived in San Diego now. Worked at some firm doing investments something or other. Surfed on the weekends. Didn't date much. "Too busy," he said, which we both knew was code for something. When I mentioned my boyfriend from 2 years ago, Cameron was quiet for a second, then nodded slowly, like he was chewing on something that didn't quite go down right. "Did you ever think," he asked suddenly, "that high school was kind of fake? Like everyone just playing a part?" I froze. Because yeah, I had. Especially him. He'd played his part perfectly. Charming, straight, safe. I, on the other hand, spent senior year pretending not to want what I wanted, which, most days, was him. We kept it going. these pseudo-work sessions that somehow always drifted into personal conversations. By the end of the first week, the slideshow was practically done, but we were still scheduling new meetings, still checking in to fine-tune things. I knew what I was doing. I think he did too, but neither of us acknowledged it. That Saturday night, he called out of the blue. No text, no email, just a random video call at 10:41 p.m. I was lying on my couch watching trash TV when my laptop lit up with his name. Late night productivity? I asked as I answered, trying not to sound caught off guard. He looked tired, hoodie zipped up, hair slightly wet like he just showered. Didn't want to email. Figured I'd just ask you real quick. I waited. He scratched his jaw. Do you still have the old group photo from our senior trip? The one at the lake house? I thought about it for a second. Yeah, I think so. Why? He shrugged. Just thought it might be cool to include. You know, nostalgia and all. I opened my archive folder and found it in a few clicks. Got it. You want me to drop it in the drive? Actually, can you screen share it? He wanted to look at it with me. I pulled it up. We both sat there, staring at this pixelated shot of 30 teenagers posing in front of a dock, sunburned and grinning, half of them mid-sentence or holding solo cups someone had cleverly cropped out for the yearbook version. There we are, he said, pointing with his mouse cursor. You with the long bangs, and me with that god-awful tribal tank top. I laughed. Yeah, that was a look. I thought I looked cool. You thought a lot of things back then, I said before I could stop myself. He glanced at me. Like what? I hesitated, then went for it. Like how pretending to be someone you're not was easier than dealing with the alternative. The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear the hum of my refrigerator in the background. Cameron didn't say anything for a long moment. Just stared at the screen, at the frozen version of himself standing next to me on that dock, 10 years ago, both of us unaware of what the next decade would hold. Then he asked, very quietly, Did you think I was pretending? I know you were, I replied. You weren't the only one. That seemed to knock the wind out of him. He leaned back in his chair, eyes drifting off screen. I could see his throat move as he swallowed, like he was trying to keep something down. Can I ask you something? He said. Yeah. Back then, did you know that I was into you? His eyes snapped back to mine. Yeah. I didn't flinch. I think everyone knew. Except, maybe you. He exhaled, a soft breath that could have been a laugh or a sigh. I wasn't ready. I know, I said. You didn't have to be. But you didn't have to pretend with me either. He nodded slowly, staring at the screen like it held answers to questions he'd been carrying for years. I didn't know how to not pretend. I didn't say anything. What was there to say? That I'd spent years wondering what might have happened if he'd just looked at me differently, just once. That even now, part of me wanted to reach through the screen and ask if he ever regretted it. Instead, I changed the subject. Want me to throw this photo into the slideshow? He nodded again. Yeah, thanks. The next time we talked, it was in person. We were both back in town for the reunion week, and Cameron suggested we meet at the library to finalize things. The same library where we used to sit during study hall. The same table, in fact. It was eerie, walking in and seeing him there. Dressed down in jeans and a plain navy tee, his phone sitting face down on the table, a water bottle beside him. He looked up when I walked in and gave me a small smile, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Hey, he said, you look good. You say that like you expected me not to. He grinned. You know what I mean. I sat down across from him. The slideshow file was already open on his laptop. We got to work, but it was half-hearted. The truth was, there wasn't much left to do. Just nitpicking transitions and tweaking photo captions. We both knew it. You ever think about what would have happened if we'd actually talked in high school? He asked out of nowhere, eyes still on the screen. Sometimes, like, if I'd actually said something, been honest, I tilted my head. Would you have? He didn't answer right away. Then, no, I don't think I knew how. I watched him carefully. Do you know how now? That question hung in the air like a challenge. He looked at me, really looked at me, and something shifted in his expression. Not surprise, not regret, just recognition, like he was finally seeing me, the real me, not the guy he half remembered from math class, not the ghost of a maybe, but the one who'd grown up, moved on, and was still, somehow, sitting across from him now. I don't know, he said finally, but I want to try. The thing about working on a slideshow for a reunion is, you end up staring at a lot of faces you haven't seen in a decade. Smiling kids frozen in time, half of them now married, half pretending they're thriving, all of them locked in that strange mix of nostalgia and denial we call adulthood. Cameron and I sat side by side, scrolling through those faces, pointing out who got hotter, who got weird, who didn't change at all. It was easy, dangerously easy. That old rhythm between us had found its groove again, like a skipped track sliding back into sync. But every so often, something would shift in him. His voice would drop, his eyes would stay on a photo too long, like the weight of pretending was finally catching up to him. So, are you out to anyone? I asked, casually, like I wasn't risking wrecking the whole vibe. He didn't look at me when he answered. Some friends, a couple people at work, not my family, definitely not anyone from back then. I nodded. You're not obligated to tell anyone, but it must be exhausting. His jaw tensed slightly. It is. Then he looked at me. You came out in college, right? First semester. Couldn't keep it in anymore. I was tired of hiding, and I knew no one from home would be around to care. He studied me for a second. Was it hard? The coming out? Not really. The waiting? That part sucked. I didn't tell him about the nights I stayed up replaying high school memories, wondering what version of myself I'd been trying to protect. Or how many people I let treat me like their emotional support gay without ever being one to them in return. I definitely didn't mention how many times he showed up in those memories. I always envied that, he said, his voice low. How you just stepped into it. I laughed once, not cruelly. You think it felt like stepping into it? More like getting shoved out of a moving car. He smiled at that, the corners of his mouth softening. Still, you didn't flinch. No, I said. But I waited a long time to stop flinching. We both looked at the screen again. A photo of senior prom was up. He was in the back row, arms wrapped around the waist of a girl named Ashley, who'd been his on and off for most of senior year. I remembered watching them dance that night. I remembered pretending not to care. She lives in Denver now, he murmured. 2 kids. You talked to her? He shook his head. Nah, we weren't really close. You dated for what, 6 months? Yeah, but it wasn't real. It was like playing house. Or doing the right thing, you know. I did. God, I did. The day before the reunion, we met at his hotel. The committee had asked us to do a final test run of the presentation on the venue's projector, and he was staying just a few blocks from the event space. I brought my laptop, thinking we'd just plug in and go. Instead, we ended up sitting on his bed, side by side, the slideshow playing on the flat screen across from us while we both sipped lukewarm coffee from paper cups. He was quiet, focused but distracted, like his body was here but his mind was somewhere else entirely. You okay? I asked. He nodded slowly, then turned to me. Do you ever feel like you missed something huge? Like, back when you were supposed to be figuring things out, you skipped a step and now you're trying to backtrack, but it's too late? I tilted my head. It's never too late. He exhaled through his nose. You say that like it's easy. It's not, but it's possible. He stared at me for a long beat. What would you have done if I had said something in high school? I knew exactly what he meant. If you'd told me the truth? I asked. He nodded. I probably would have kissed you, I said. That stopped him. His breath hitched, barely noticeable, but it was there. I used to imagine that, he admitted, voice low. Not the kiss, just saying it, telling you. But I couldn't. You don't have to apologize. I'm not, he said. I just think about it sometimes. Like, what we could have been. He looked at me then, full on, his expression open in a way I hadn't seen before. And what about now? I asked, my voice quiet. He didn't answer right away. Just looked down at his hands. Then, like it cost him something, he said, I don't know how to be this version of myself, not around people who still remember the old one. That's the thing, I said gently. You don't have to erase the old version. You just have to stop pretending he's still the only one that exists. When the slideshow ended, the screen faded to black. The room was suddenly too quiet, too charged. I should probably go, I said, breaking the silence. He nodded but didn't move. Then, as I stood up, he caught my wrist. Not roughly, just enough to make me pause. Liam, he said. I turned. He stood too, slowly, like every movement was something he had to think through. I don't know what I'm doing, he said, but I don't want this to end when the reunion does. That caught me off guard. You mean us working together? I asked, testing the edge. He didn't blink. No, I mean us. And there it was. The thing he hadn't said for 10 years. The part of him he'd locked away, buried under years of handshakes and heteronormativity and late-night what-ifs. I took a step closer. Not to challenge him, just to be near. You don't have to know what you're doing, I said. You just have to start. His eyes searched mine for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. The night of the reunion felt surreal. There was something about walking into your old high school gym, now dressed up with rented string lights and cheap centerpieces, that made time collapse. I half expected to hear the morning bell, or see Mrs. Keating glaring at us for not doing our Spanish homework. People were everywhere. Classmates I hadn't thought about in years suddenly reappeared, a little older, slightly balder, some of them pushing strollers or proudly showing off wedding rings, like participation trophies for adulthood. Everyone was smiling a little too wide, laughing a little too loud, and pretending they hadn't rehearsed every conversation in their heads before stepping through the doors. I saw Cameron before he saw me. He was talking to a group of guys near the snack table, holding a plastic cup of something suspiciously amber-colored, wearing a black button-up that fit too well to be accidental. He looked comfortable, at ease. But I could tell it was a performance. I knew his tells now, the way his fingers tapped his leg when he wasn't sure what to say, how his smile tightened just a little when someone touched on something too close to the truth. When our eyes finally met, his expression shifted, not dramatically, just enough, and that was all I needed. We were scheduled to present around 8 p.m., just before the open mic portion, where people could share memories or make awkward toasts. It was all supposed to be light and fun, a sweet retrospective. But for me, the night was teetering between nostalgia and something much sharper. Cameron found me near the back corner where I was checking the projector setup one last time. Hey, he said, sliding up beside me. His cologne hit first. Clean, warm, familiar. You good? Yeah. You? He nodded. A little nervous, I smirked. About the slideshow or the people? He gave a dry laugh. Both. We stood in silence for a moment, watching old photos cycle through the preview screen. High school dances, spirit weeks, football games. Faces frozen mid-laugh. Then he leaned in slightly. Thanks for pushing me. I glanced at him. I didn't push you. You didn't let me stay quiet either. I guess I just wanted you to see what it felt like, to be honest. He nodded again, but didn't say anything. Until he did. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about not erasing who I was. And I think you're right. I can't pretend anymore. Not around you, not around myself. There were people everywhere, mingling, posing for pictures, shouting across the gym. But in that moment, it felt like the two of us were the only ones standing still. I could have reached for his hand, could have said something cheeky to lighten the moment. But instead, I just held his gaze and said, "Then don't." When our names were called, we walked to the front together. People clapped politely. Someone whistled. I heard someone yell, "Let's go, Cam!" from the back, and saw a few guys from his old soccer team raising their cups. I stood at the mic while Cameron clicked through the slides. We kept it simple. A few jokes, some crowd-pleasing throwbacks, a few mild roasts. We didn't mention anything real, nothing about who we'd been outside those pictures. But something had changed. When I made a joke and Cameron laughed, it felt genuine. When our shoulders bumped, he didn't flinch. And when we reached the final slide, a quote about how far we'd all come, he looked at me in a way that told me he meant it. As the slideshow ended, the applause was louder than I expected. I stepped away from the mic, and for a second, Cameron hesitated. Then he leaned over and said into it, unscripted. Also, shout out to my co-host. He carried the whole thing, and he still looks exactly the same as he did in 2013. There were chuckles. I turned red, probably. And for a split second, as I walked off stage, I felt 17 again. Except this time, I wasn't hiding anything. And neither was he. Later, after the reunion wound down, we ended up outside together. Away from the crowd. Away from the noise. The parking lot was half empty. Just a few lingering groups, finishing their drinks, saying drawn-out goodbyes. Cameron leaned against his car, hands in his pockets, looking up at the sky like the stars might offer him clarity. I feel like I should say something profound, he murmured. You don't have to, I replied, stepping next to him. But I want to, he said, then paused. I've lived my whole life worrying about what people would think, about being safe, being liked, being the version of me that everyone expected. And I think I was waiting for someone to give me permission to stop. I looked at him. You don't need permission. He turned to face me. Okay, he said, then this is me not asking. And then, finally, he kissed me, soft, intentional, not rushed. There wasn't a grand declaration or dramatic dip. Just a long overdue, very quiet, very real kiss in the parking lot of our high school gym, under string lights and stars, and the faint echo of someone playing a pop song on a dying Bluetooth speaker. When we pulled apart, he looked at me and said, I missed a lot of chances. I smiled. You didn't miss this one. We didn't go home that night. Well, we didn't go to our homes. Anyway. After the kiss, neither of us really said anything for a minute. There was no script for this part. No slideshow. Just two guys standing beside a car in the quiet aftermath of something that had been waiting 10 years to happen. Cameron was the first to speak. You want to come back to my hotel? The way he said it. It wasn't loaded. There wasn't some sly undertone or awkward stammer. Just a simple, honest question. And maybe that's why I said yes. We drove in silence. Not tense silence. The kind that feels like air after being underwater for too long. I kept stealing glances at him while he drove. His hands steady on the wheel. His jawline more relaxed than I'd seen all week. Like something inside him had clicked into place. When we got to the room, he unlocked the door, stepped inside, and just stood there. Like he wasn't sure what was supposed to happen next. I stepped in behind him and closed the door. He turned around, and for a second, he looked nervous. I've never done this, he said quietly. Like, invited a guy back. Or just let it happen. You don't have to overthink it, I said. We can just sit, talk. Nothing has to happen. He nodded, grateful. I want to be around you, that's all. So we sat on the edge of the bed, facing each other like kids at a sleepover, except there was a weight to the air now, not heavy, just present. He ran a hand through his hair. You ever feel like your life was paused for years and you didn't even know it? I nodded. Yeah. I think for a while, I convinced myself I was fine with it. He looked at me. And now? Now I know I wasn't. He smiled a little. Same. We talked. About stupid things at first. People we'd seen at the reunion. The bad playlist. How weird it was that Josh Callahan now ran a kombucha company in Oregon. But then the conversation drifted, and Cameron started asking questions that made it clear he wasn't just curious. He was ready. What was your first real relationship like? How did you know you were in love? Did your parents take it okay? I answered each one, not trying to impress him, not trying to soften anything, just honest. And he listened, like he was soaking in every word. Eventually, I asked, did you ever fall for anyone back then? Even if you didn't say anything? He hesitated, then nodded. Yeah. I waited. He looked down at his hands. You. That word, just that one, hit me in a way I wasn't prepared for. Not because I hadn't suspected it, but because I never thought I'd hear it. I didn't know what to do with it, he said. It scared me. Not the feeling, really. Just what it meant. What people would say. What I'd lose. I get it, I said. I used to see you walking across campus, he continued, wearing those beat-up Converse and carrying that dumb camera around. And you always looked like you knew something the rest of us didn't. Like you'd figured out who you were, and the rest of us were just pretending. I didn't have it figured out, I said. I was just tired of pretending. He gave a soft laugh. God, I wanted to be near you. I just didn't know how to do it without giving myself away. I didn't know what to say, so I reached out and touched his hand. Lightly, no pressure, just presence. He didn't pull away. In fact, he curled his fingers around mine. The night passed slowly. We lay on the bed, side by side, not touching at first. Just being. Every once in a while, one of us would say something, a memory, a confession, a dumb joke, and then there would be silence again. But it was a good silence. At one point, I turned toward him. He was already looking at me. You know, I said, this doesn't have to be just a one-night thing. His brow furrowed slightly. You want more? I do, he exhaled. So do I. I just don't know how to do this. Not with a guy, not in real life. You learn, I said simply. You mess up. You figure it out. And if the other person's patient, it's okay. Are you patient? I smiled. Mostly. He laughed. And then he leaned over and kissed me again. This time, slower, less careful, less like a question, and more like a beginning. We didn't sleep much, not for the reasons people might assume. We just stayed awake, talking, touching occasionally, letting ourselves exist in this strange, quiet space that felt removed from everything else, our town, our past, even our own doubts. Sometime around 4 a.m., I woke up with my head on his chest, his arm wrapped around my back, breathing steady and deep. And I thought, this could be something. Not just nostalgia, not just unfinished business, but something real. The morning after didn't feel like a regret. I woke up to the low hum of the air conditioner and the faint smell of hotel shampoo. For a few seconds, I just lay there, eyes still closed, letting the weight of him beside me feel real. Cameron was still asleep. He was on his side, facing me, breathing slow and even. One arm half draped over his pillow, the other curled slightly near his chest like he wasn't sure if it was safe to reach out again. There was something almost childlike about it, like his body hadn't caught up to his heart yet. I watched him for a while. I hadn't done that in a long time, just looked at someone without rushing, without expectations. He looked different when he slept, softer, less put together. And I liked it. Eventually he stirred. His eyes opened slowly, blinking against the light. When he saw me, he didn't flinch or pull away. He smiled, small but real. Hey, he murmured. Hey. He rubbed his face and sat up, back against the headboard, sheets bunching around his waist. That wasn't a dream, right? I stretched. If it was, we had the same one. He chuckled lightly, then grew quiet. I feel weird, but not in a bad way. Weird how? Like, I woke up in someone else's life. except it feels more like mine than the one I've been living. That sat between us for a second. Then he looked at me. Is that normal? I nodded. Yeah. It's called being honest with yourself. It screws with your sense of time. He laughed again, more freely this time. You make it sound like a diagnosis. Don't worry. It's treatable. Side effects include better sleep and suddenly realizing you're not alone. His smile faded into something more thoughtful. I've been alone for a long time, even when I wasn't. I didn't push him on that. I didn't need to. We checked out around 11, both of us moving a little slower than usual. Not because we were tired, though we were, but because neither of us wanted the moment to end. We walked out to the parking lot and stood beside his car, bags slung over our shoulders. I've got brunch with my parents, he said, fidgeting with his keys. You gonna tell them? He looked at me, startled, then shook his head. Not yet, but I'm thinking about it. That's fair. He leaned against the car, squinting into the sun. What about you? You heading out today? Yeah. My train's at 3. You want to ride to the station? I smiled. Sure. The drive was quiet at first. That comfortable kind of quiet that doesn't need to be filled. Eventually, he spoke. I keep replaying last night in my head, he said. Not just the kiss, the stuff we talked about, the way you looked at me. I glanced over at him. How did I look at you? Like you weren't scared. I let that hang in the air before answering. I used to be. All the time. But not with you. Not anymore. He nodded slowly. I want to get to that place. I don't know how long it'll take, but I want it. That's all that matters, I said. He reached over and rested his hand on my knee. It was small, tentative, but grounded. He didn't pull it away. At the station, we hugged longer than we probably should have. Not dramatic or clingy, just real. I felt his hand press into my back, like he was trying to remember what it felt like to let someone in and not be punished for it. I'm going to text you, he said, stepping back. You better. And I'm going to visit, he added, his voice firmer now. Soon. I want to see you where you live, where you're you. I raised an eyebrow. You mean where I walk around shirtless and drink oat milk lattes? He grinned. Exactly. I turned to head inside, then stopped and looked back at him. Cameron? Yeah? You did great last night. He looked confused. At the reunion? At being you? He didn't respond. Just smiled, and this time, it wasn't the practiced grin I remembered from high school. It was new. Earnest. Then he nodded. See you soon, Liam. And he meant it. Cameron came to visit 2 weeks later. He didn't text first. He called. Said he was passing through the city for work and figured, if I wasn't busy, maybe we could grab a drink. I told him to come over instead. It wasn't a date, not exactly. I didn't clean obsessively or change my outfit 4 times, but I did move the stack of unread mail off the kitchen counter, and I lit a candle like some accidental aromatherapy might make things easier. When he showed up, he looked nervous again. Not scared, just uncertain, like this part of the journey still didn't feel real. I opened the door, and he stood there holding a 6-pack and wearing that same navy jacket from the reunion. His eyes met mine, and the tension dissolved in an instant. He stepped in, I stepped aside. It was easy after that. We didn't talk about the reunion much, or the slideshow, or high school. That chapter was done. Instead, we sat on my couch, legs half-tangled, the window cracked open to the street noise below, and we talked like people who wanted to know each other, not remember each other. I asked about his job. Turns out, he'd been quietly killing it at his firm, recently promoted. He asked about my editing work, and actually seemed interested in the weird, niche documentary I'd just finished about antique neon signs. Around midnight, we were sitting on the floor, backs against the couch, sharing the last beer. He looked over and said, You know what's strange? What? You feel familiar, but not in a high school way. It's like, I've known you my whole life, but I'm meeting you for the first time. I didn't say anything. Instead, I leaned over and kissed him. And this time, there was nothing tentative about it. No fear, no hesitation, just warmth and intent and 10 years of something quietly waiting. When we broke apart, he kept his forehead against mine and whispered, "I'm not hiding anymore." "Good," I said, my hand sliding into his, "because I'm not waiting anymore either." The next few months weren't a montage of perfect moments. They were clumsy and full of learning. Cameron had questions. About community, about identity, about how to be. And I tried not to answer for him, I just stayed close. We took it slow. Not because we had to, but because it felt right. First, weekend visits. Then weeknights. Eventually, he asked if I thought he could move here. "Not for me," he said. "With me." The word landed like a stone in water. Heavy, intentional, lasting. The last time we saw our old classmates was when someone from the reunion committee emailed asking for photos for the school's alumni newsletter. They wanted to do a follow-up. I sent in one from a month ago. A photo of us at a street fair, Cameron mid-laugh, me wearing a ridiculous bucket hat he insisted on buying me. No caption, no explanation. Just us. Sometimes, I still think about that first Zoom call. How ordinary it felt. How I almost declined. How much of life can change in a single sentence, a glance, a missed opportunity that, somehow, comes back around. 10 years ago, I sat in the back of a classroom, stealing glances at a guy who was too scared to look back. Now he looks at me like he knows. And I look at him like he's home.